The Great Hall of the Galactic Concord was not a place meant for a single human. It was a chamber older than most civilizations, wide enough that echoes lived there even when no one spoke. Light from faraway stars flowed through crystal windows, scattering colors across the silver floor. Every corner of the hall hummed with the presence of alien life creatures, tall, small, scaled, feathered, glowing, and some that drifted like clouds. They came from worlds with red oceans, twin suns, floating mountains, or frozen deserts. And in the middle of all of them stood one human. Evan. He was not special, not a captain, not a soldier, not a scientist with medals. He was simply a cultural technician from Earth, one of the lowest roles on the diplomatic ladder. His job was to check translation devices, clean data panels, update language modules, and sometimes carry coffee for diplomats who barely remembered his name. He did not belong in the center of the hall, under the great lights. He knew that. Every alien in the room knew that. Humans were a young species, inexperienced, emotional, unpredictable, too soft for grand politics, too small for galactic power. In most meetings, they stayed quiet. Others preferred it that way. Yet today, every alien gaze was pointed at Evan. He could feel it as a weight on his skin. Curious eyes, sharp eyes, judging eyes. Hundreds of alien dignitaries stood on elevated platforms, carved from their own culture's traditions. Some hummed softly when nervous. Some clicked their mandibles. Some shifted their feathers. A few showed their displeasure openly, letting their tentacles curl or their spines rise. Evan's heartbeat was louder than all of them. He told himself to breathe. But even his own breaths felt out of place in the ancient chamber. He wished he could disappear into the floor, vanish behind the tall banners that hung from the ceiling. Those banners represented every world in the Concord, glowing softly with the colors of their flags. They seemed to whisper, "You do not belong here, human." Maybe they were right. Just 1 hour ago, Evan had been outside the hall, fixing a minor glitch in a translation headset. He had not even been wearing his formal coat. His badge was still dusty from storage files he had sorted that morning. He was tired, hungry, and worried about the small evaluation scheduled for next week, a simple performance review that decided if he could stay on the team. That was supposed to be his biggest problem today. But then the alarm sounded. Then the summons came. Then the guards escorted him inside the great hall before he could ask what was happening. He had no idea why he was here. He only knew that the hall had never felt so tense. Diplomats from the Korat Dominion, tall, armored beings with shimmering scales, stood at the front platform. Their eyes glowed faintly with anger. Beside them, representatives from other worlds whispered amongst themselves. Nervous and confused, Evan felt very small in the middle of all of them. He tried to stand straight, but his arms hung awkwardly at his sides. His palms were sweaty. His throat felt tight. Every step he took sounded too loud in the silent chamber. Almost disrespectful. He wished he could pretend this was a joke, a mistake, maybe. The guard had grabbed the wrong human, but no, everyone was staring at him too intensely for this to be a mistake. A floating creature with translucent wings drifted closer to its microphone. Its voice was gentle but carried through the entire hall. "Human technician Evan of Earth," it announced. "You have been summoned to respond to a matter of great concern." Evan swallowed. He didn't know why, but he already felt the cold grip of trouble in his stomach. Something had gone wrong, terribly wrong, and somehow he was standing at the center of it. The hall's lights dimmed slightly, focusing on him. He heard a murmur ripple through the platforms, hundreds of species whispering in languages he didn't understand, only catching pieces like, "Why him? A human? Impossible. They sent a technician? This is disrespectful. The young species does not understand the weight of the issue." Evan felt each whisper like a needle. He wasn't brave, he wasn't ready, he wasn't supposed to be here, but he was, standing alone in the vast hall of 1,000 voices. With every alien's attention sharp as a blade, he understood one thing clearly: something ancient and dangerous had reached out across the galaxy. And somehow, it was reaching for him. The Korat ambassador stepped forward. 6 eyes glowed brighter as it extended a sharp, clawed hand toward Evan. Its voice was like grinding metal, low and deliberate. "Human," it hissed, "your species has interfered with relics older than your civilization. Ancient codes meant to guide all worlds have been misused. Your actions threaten balance." Evan froze. He did not understand. He had touched no relics. He had only been organizing translation data. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what he had done wrong. But the weight of the hall pressed down on him, and the glowing eyes of hundreds of beings made him feel smaller than he ever had in his life. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Every species in the room seemed to lean closer, waiting for him to answer. Some clicked their mandibles. Others rumbled low in the chest. Even the soft-winged creatures hovering above stopped moving. Every being in the chamber was waiting. Evan felt the heat rise in his cheeks. He tried to think, tried to form words, but fear tangled his thoughts. His hands trembled at his sides. This wasn't a simple mistake at work. This wasn't a failed translation module. He was facing judgment from the entire galaxy. One of the elder alien representatives, a floating orb-like creature with shifting colors, floated forward. Its voice was calm, almost sorrowful. The human may be inexperienced, yes, it said, but the relic in question, it is beyond comprehension. It carries patterns of a language older than our records. Only a being connected to its memory could interact with it at all. Evan's stomach dropped. Memory? Connection? He remembered touching the relic for only a moment last week, a small glowing symbol tucked away in an old archive. At the time, it had felt familiar, strange, as though it were calling to something inside him. But he had shrugged it off. It was just a feeling. A memory of something he could not explain. And now here he was, accused of tampering with the foundation of all galactic knowledge. The Korat ambassador's claws clicked against the floor, a sound that made Evan flinch. It is not enough to claim ignorance, it said. The relic is sacred. Its language is sacred. Your human mind has dared to touch what no species has touched for a million cycles. You must be judged. Whispers rippled through the hall. They don't understand the weight of it. A human should not speak here. They are too young, too reckless. Every word was like a stone thrown at Evan's chest. He wanted to run. He wanted to disappear. But he could not. The hall's wide floors felt endless, and yet he could not move. All eyes were on him. He realized in that terrifying moment that his life, or at least the honor of his species, was in his hands. Evan's mind raced back to that night in the archive. He remembered the symbol glowing faintly in the dim light. When he touched it, a sound or maybe a feeling had echoed inside his mind. It was soft, like a note played before the universe existed. A memory, yes, but also something alive. He had never told anyone. He could not have explained it if he tried. And now, that memory pulsed again inside him. He clenched his fists, trying to steady his shaking hands. He swallowed hard. He had no evidence, no argument, no logical explanation. Only the faint echo of that sound, the only thing that felt like a true connection to the relic. The hall waited. Silence pressed against him. The Korat ambassador's eyes narrowed. Do you deny it? It demanded. Do you admit to this interference, human? Evan's lips parted. He opened his mouth. No words came at first. Then the memory of the sound surged stronger, urging him to speak. It wasn't about denying or admitting. It was something else. Something primal. Something that had been buried in the deepest parts of him, in the folds of his mind he had never understood. He could feel it now. A pulse, a vibration that made the hair on his arms stand up. Something inside him whispered, softly, urgently. He didn't know if speaking it would save him or make everything worse, but he felt a strange courage rising. A warmth spreading from somewhere deep, like fire in the bones of a species that had survived against impossible odds. And for the first time, Evan realized that maybe humans were not as small as the galaxy thought. Maybe, just maybe, this trembling, frightened human could stand in the face of 100 worlds and do something no one else could. And then he made a choice. Evan stood frozen in the center of the hall. Hundreds of eyes, glowing, clicking, shifting, stared at him. The Korat ambassador leaned forward, claws ready, as if daring him to speak. The weight of judgment was crushing. Every being in the hall expected him to fail, to stammer, to confirm their worst thoughts about humans: weak, small, incapable. And yet, deep inside, a small voice stirred. A whisper from memory. Something ancient, something he had felt but never understood. It was the memory of the relic, the glowing symbol he had touched last week. At the time, it had been just an archive artifact. Now in this moment of terror, it felt alive. It felt like it was calling to him. He remembered the first time he had felt it. The archive had been quiet, empty, dust motes dancing in shafts of sunlight. He had run his fingers along the symbol, expecting nothing. And then, it had hummed in his mind. Not a sound that came through the ears, but a vibration deep in his chest. A note, a tone. Something older than history. Something older than the stars themselves. Evan tried to recall it now. The memory was faint, fragile, like a candle in a storm. He closed his eyes, hoping to hear it again. And then, slowly, a vibration returned, soft but insistent. It wrapped around his mind, a pulse that said, "This is what you were meant to hear. This is what you were made for." His heart raced. He didn't understand why, or how, or what it meant. Humans had never been part of galactic politics, never part of the ancient histories. Humans were young, fragile, and mortal. And yet, here he was, carrying a memory that no other species could recall. The whispers of the hall faded in his mind. The clicking of mandibles, the low hums, the rustling wings, they became distant. All he could hear was that sound. The tone of the relic. Something alive, something older than life. And suddenly, he knew. He knew that this memory was not just a memory. It was a language. Not one used by any species alive, not one recorded in any archive. It was the language of the creators themselves, the beings who had shaped the galaxy, who had vanished before most civilizations had even learned to breathe. Evan's legs shook. He had never felt power like this before. Not strength of arms, or speed, or intelligence. This was something deeper. Something terrifying. Something sacred. He realized in that moment that the galaxy had underestimated humans, not because they were weak, but because they were still discovering what humans were capable of. The Korat ambassador's voice broke his thoughts. "Answer us, human. Do you deny your interference?" Evan's hands trembled. He could not speak in words that mattered to them. Words would not carry the truth. But the tone, the memory could. He could try to utter it, even if he did not fully understand it himself. He inhaled slowly. The air in the hall felt heavy, thick with anticipation. His lips parted. The vibration of the memory pulsed through him. He tried to match it, letting it flow through his mouth, letting it become sound. Nothing happened at first. His voice was weak, quivering. The aliens shifted, confused, impatient. The Korat ambassador's claws clicked. But then, something strange occurred. A single note escaped Evan's lips. It was not a human word. Not a Korat word. Not a word any translator could recognize. It was perfect, pure, resonant. It carried no threat, no anger, no fear, only the echo of creation itself. The hall grew still. The floating elders stopped their murmurs. Wings froze mid-flap. Mandibles clicked in hesitation. Even the ambient lights seemed to dim, as though the stars outside had paused to listen. The vibration in Evan's chest spread outward, touching every being present. It was the first sound of life, before civilizations, before speech. Evan could feel it, trembling in his own body, and yet calm at the same time. It was terrifying. It was comforting. It was. Right. He tried another note, letting the vibration build, letting it flow naturally, without thought, without fear. The memory guided him. The language of the creators spoke through him. And as he did, Evan felt a strange warmth in his chest. A connection not just to the relic, but to the galaxy itself. He was no longer a frightened human in a hall of judgment. He was something more. Something no one expected. Something that had been underestimated for too long. And for the first time in his life, he realized that humans were not small. Not weak, not irrelevant. They had been waiting. The echo of creation had waited for them. And now, Evan was speaking it. Evan's voice shook at first. Small and uncertain, but the sound that came out was not his own. It was older, deeper. It hummed through the hall like sunlight through crystal, touching every corner, every being, every heart. The Korat ambassador froze mid-step, claws poised for judgment. As the vibration spread, the other aliens didn't move either. Hundreds of species had gathered to witness a human falter, and instead, they stopped in place, mesmerized. Wings stilled. Mandibles froze. Eyes widened. Even the council head, who had seen countless historic moments, held her staff but did not speak. Evan felt the power of the sound in his chest, pulsing like a heartbeat older than the oldest star. It filled him with a warmth he had never known and a fear he had never imagined. He was small, a single human in a hall of hundreds of alien leaders, but now he carried a language that none of them had heard in a million cycles. He tried another note, letting the vibration flow naturally, unforced. The hall seemed to respond. The hum of conversation, the low clicks, the soft murmurs, they all faded into silence. It was as if the universe itself had paused, leaning closer to hear what a human could say. He could not understand all of it himself, but the memory inside him guided the sound. Each vibration felt alive, shaping the air like a gentle wind, carrying meaning beyond words. The echoes resonated with something deep in the minds of the council. Some bowed slightly. Some whispered ancient prayers they had not spoken for centuries. Some trembled, overwhelmed by the purity of the sound. The Korat ambassador's 6 eyes were wide with shock. Its claws twitched nervously. It had accused humans of ignorance, of recklessness. Yet here was a human, alone, standing in the middle of a hall meant for mighty empires, speaking a language older than any of them could remember. What? It stammered, the metallic hiss breaking into soft, uncertain tones. How is this possible? Evan didn't answer in words. He couldn't. Words belonged to civilizations. Words belonged to the living. But this language belonged to the makers. The ancient beings who had shaped all life in the galaxy. He let it flow, letting the vibrations guide his mouth. Letting the resonance carry through the hall. Weaving through the platforms, the banners, the crystal windows. The very bones of the chamber. A soft wind seemed to sweep through the hall, though no doors were open. The banners fluttered gently. The lights from distant stars scattered across the silver floor, brighter than before. Something primal, ancient, and beautiful was awakening in the hearts of every being present. Evan felt his fear melt. The terror that had gripped him for hours, maybe even years, faded. He realized the sound was not just for them, it was for him too. The memory of the relic, the pulse of creation inside him, it belonged to humanity now. And through him, the galaxy remembered. A voice whispered in the hall, almost trembling with awe. It is the primal tongue. The words seemed to come from everywhere at once. The council head, her hands shaking slightly on the staff, spoke next, voice barely above a whisper. The language of the creators. None of us have heard it for 1,000,000 cycles. It was lost. Until now. Evan's mind raced. He didn't understand why he could speak it. He didn't understand why humans, the weakest species in the galaxy's eyes, carried this memory. But one truth shone clearly. Humans were underestimated. He felt it in his bones, in the strength of the vibrations flowing through him, in the silence of the hall that had once been ready to judge him. The Korat ambassador sank slightly, claws folding. Other representatives lowered their eyes. The fear and arrogance that had filled the hall only moments ago were replaced with awe, respect, and an almost sacred silence. Evan's last note faded into a soft hum. The vibrations lingered, like aftershocks of a song the galaxy had long forgotten. And as the hall remained motionless, the reality sank in. He had done something no one else could. A human had spoken the language of the creators, and the galaxy had listened. Evan opened his eyes. He was still trembling. He was still one man, small and alone. But now, in the hall of 1,000 voices, he was something more. He was a bridge between humanity and the ancient echoes of the universe, carrying a power no species had expected a human to possess. The silence was complete. Even the whispers and clicks had stopped. Every alien, every leader, every observer waited. They were no longer enemies or accusers, they were witnesses. And Evan realized, for the first time in his life, that humans were not powerless. Not small. Not weak. They were connected to something far older, far greater, and far more extraordinary than anyone had believed. The human had spoken, and the universe, at least in that hall, had stopped to hear him. The hall remained silent. Not a single sound moved through it, no clicks, no hums, no whispers. The hundreds of alien leaders, representatives of countless worlds, were frozen in awe. Evan felt the vibrations of the sound he had spoken, still lingering in the air, wrapping around every being like invisible threads. It was as if time itself had paused to watch a human speak the language of the creators. Evan's knees shook, but he held his ground. He did not fully understand what he had just done, only that it had changed everything. The Korat ambassador, who had been so full of anger minutes ago, lowered its claws slowly. Its 6 eyes were wide, glowing softly, but not with rage. Confusion, awe, and fear mingled in them. The ambassador's voice trembled as it finally spoke. How? How can this be? It whispered. A human. Speaking the language of the makers? The council head, a tall alien with silver feathers and calm eyes, approached him. Her staff rested lightly in her hand, but she did not raise it in command. Instead, she looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and reverence. It has been lost for cycles beyond count, she said softly. No species has heard this tongue in 1,000,000 cycles, yet. You have spoken it. Evan felt a strange warmth rise in his chest. The fear that had gripped him earlier now mixed with a quiet pride. He was just a human, small, fragile, inexperienced, but somehow he carried something ancient. Something the galaxy had thought lost forever. A trembling elder alien, a floating orb of shifting colors, hovered closer. Its voice was gentle but filled with awe. The memory. You carry the memory of the creators in your mind, it said. No one else can hear it, you. You are closer to them than any other species. Evan blinked. He did not understand. Why him? Why a human? Humans were young, weak, emotional. How could he, a simple technician, hold the key to a language no one else had remembered? The whispers began slowly at first, soft murmurs moving from platform to platform. Then they grew louder, though never harsh. The aliens spoke among themselves in tones Evan could not translate, yet he could feel the meaning. Respect, fear, reverence. The judgment that had filled the room before was gone. In its place was something new, recognition. Humans were no longer just a young, insignificant species. They were something more. Even the Korat ambassador bowed slightly, something no one would have imagined before. Its 6 eyes flickered with a strange light. It did not speak further. There was nothing to argue. Nothing to threaten. Evan had spoken a language older than stars, and that was undeniable. Evan's chest swelled with emotions he had never felt. Fear, yes, but also wonder, awe, and a strange sense of belonging. He was just one human, yet he had changed the way an entire hall of civilization saw his species. He realized in that moment that humans had been underestimated not because they were weak, but because they had always carried something that others could not understand. Something ancient, something sacred. A soft musical vibration echoed faintly from the relic in his mind. He did not try to control it. It flowed through him naturally, carrying the echo of the first sound he had heard in the archive. It was not a threat. It was not a weapon. It was truth. The council head raised her staff slightly. Her voice, calm and measured, carried through the hall. Earth has a voice we cannot ignore, she said. A voice that carries the memory of the creators. Let it be known, humans are not to be underestimated. They are not insignificant. They are witnesses to something the galaxy has long forgotten. Evan blinked. He felt his hands trembling, but not from fear. From wonder. From the weight of what he had done. He had only spoken a sound, a memory, a vibration older than words themselves. And yet, it had changed everything. The hall remained quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, beings from every world began to bow their heads in respect. Not to him as a person, but to the echo of something greater that he had carried. The sound had spoken for humanity, and the galaxy had listened. Evan exhaled. He felt both small and immense at the same time. Small, because he was one human, alone. Immense, because in his mind and his voice, he carried the echo of the creators themselves. He realized that humans were not powerless, not weak, not unimportant. They were closer to the beginning than any other species. And for the first time in his life, Evan felt truly proud to be human. The Hall of 1,000 Voices, once ready to condemn him, now stood in awe of one human who had uttered a sound older than the stars. And the echoes of that sound lingered, a reminder that even the smallest species could carry the greatest truths. The silence in the hall was thick, heavy with awe and disbelief. Evan stood at the center, trembling slightly, unsure of what he had done, yet feeling the undeniable truth of it deep in his chest. Hundreds of alien eyes were on him, each filled with a mixture of reverence, fear, and astonishment. For the first time, no one questioned a human's place in the galaxy. For the first time, humans mattered. The council head stepped closer, her silver-feathered form glowing faintly in the ambient light. Her voice was soft, trembling with something Evan had never heard before: wonder. The sound. The tone you spoke, she said, it is the primal tongue. The language of the creators. None of us have heard it in a million cycles. And yet, you have spoken it. Evan blinked. I didn't mean to, he stammered. I remembered something from the archive. A symbol, a sound. That's all. I didn't know it was important. The council head shook her head slowly. It is not just important. It is sacred. This language is older than time, older than our civilizations, older than most stars. It shaped our very understanding of communication, of thought, of existence itself. And yet, it has been lost until now. You, human, have brought it back. A ripple of whispers spread through the hall. The Korat ambassador's 6 eyes flickered nervously. Impossible, it muttered. Humans, how could they? Another elder, a floating orb with shifting colors, spoke, voice quivering. It is not impossible, humans. Humans may be the closest to the creators of any species alive. Their minds, their instincts, carry echoes we have forgotten. The vibration you spoke it resonates in ways none of us can match. The creator's memory lives in you. Evan's chest tightened. Why me? He whispered. Why a human? We're nothing. We're young. We're small. We're weak. Not weak, the council head said firmly. Not small. Not insignificant. You are different. You carry what others cannot. You have touched something ancient and returned it to the galaxy. Humans have been underestimated for too long. Perhaps because you are still discovering your own power. Perhaps because the galaxy has never seen what humans can do when they are truly connected to the universe. Evan looked around the hall. At the hundreds of beings who had once been ready to condemn him. Ready to judge him, ready to see humans as irrelevant. Now they looked at him with respect. Not fear alone, not worship, but recognition. Humans were no longer the species to be ignored. Humans were something else. Something that carried the memory of the creators. Something that reminded the galaxy of its own beginnings. The Korat ambassador lowered its claws fully. This human speaks the language of the creators? It asked, voice trembling. Yes, the council head said. And it is a truth the galaxy cannot ignore. Humans are closer to the makers than any other species. Your judgments, your accusations, they mean nothing in the face of this revelation. The human carries what we have all lost. Evan felt a mix of awe and disbelief. He was just one man. One simple human. He had not sought power, glory, or recognition. He had only followed the faint memory of a sound, a vibration buried in his mind. And yet, that simple act had shaken the confidence of entire civilizations. A soft hum echoed from his mind again, the memory of the relic, the sound he had spoken. It wrapped around him like a gentle wind. It was not just a sound. It was a connection. A reminder that humans were not merely participants in the galaxy. They were part of its origin story. The council head raised her staff, voice firm but gentle. Let it be known across all worlds. Humans are no longer a species to be dismissed. They carry within them echoes of the creators themselves. Their presence is sacred. Their voice is to be heard. And this human, she gestured to Evan, has proven it today. Evan exhaled slowly. His knees trembled, but his heart felt lighter than it had ever felt before. He had not done this to prove anything. He had done it because the sound had called to him, because the relic had asked to be remembered, and now, humans mattered in ways the galaxy had never imagined. Around him, the council and the ambassadors murmured. The whispers were not of doubt, they were of reverence, awe, and something new, hope. Humans, once underestimated, were now recognized as carriers of something the galaxy had lost. Something that had existed before history itself. And Evan realized that everything had changed, not just for him, not just for Earth, but for all of humanity. The galaxy had seen a human speak the language of the creators, and the galaxy would never forget it.